All right, so we're going to tackle posts and comments. That was a challenge that we had you guys work on for yesterday. So let me share my screen here. All right, so here we go. I've already forked it over, so I'm just going to copy the URL here. Let's get our project started. So I'm going to do a git clone, paste my URL. There we go. Let me cd into that and bring up a VS Code window. All right, let me relocate my window, and here we go. All right, so in this case, we've given you a project, but we've not created the Django project for you. So we're going to be creating a Django project from scratch here for posts and comments. Let's take a quick scan of what posts and comments are asking for. So we're going to create an app where you can view posts and comments associated with that post. So we're going to likely have two models here. We're going to have, I'm assuming, a post model and a comments model that we need to create. And then they're going to be related in some manner. So we'll think about that as we're designing our models. All right, so I'm going to go to my VS Code window and let's get started here. Again, I want to just give you guys more practice here. So I'm going to have the audience kind of help me out here. Jonas, you are first on my screen, so I'm going to ask you first. I want to create a Django project. What's my very first step that I should be doing?
All right, the first thing you're going to have to do is create, I believe it was a virtual environment. So it's going to be Python-m and then venv space and then venv or .venv, depending on how you want to name it.
Gotcha. Again, you kind of have your own preference of how you might want to name your virtual environment. I think I adopt this because the VS Code docs uses the .venv. So that's kind of why I stick with that. I'm not sure if that's better to have a hidden folder or not, but I'll just go with that. You guys can name it, whatever makes sense to you. All right, cool. So I create my virtual environment. Don Kelly, how do I actually get into my virtual environment here? I think you might be muted there, Don.
Source.venv bin activate.
Yep, you got it. All right. Seems like you guys are getting good at this. All right. So notice that my terminal prompt is prepended by my virtual environment name. So that means I'm actually in my virtual environment now in my terminal. So that's great. All right, Andrew, you are next in the line. Sorry, you're about to take a sip of coffee, I think. How do I get Django up and running here? So I'm in my virtual environment. What's my next step?
That's Django admin start app. No, I don't.
Okay. So if I try to do Django admin start, you said app?
Yeah, start app.
Before that,
There's a step before that.
So question for you. We're trying to use Django admin. Where's Django admin?
Oh, yeah, import Django and Encyclopedia 2. Yep.
So what do I need to do?
Import Django.
Import Django. I think I know what you mean, but instead of importing, I think we need to install it. Yep.
Okay.
I think we had the right idea.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to do Django. And just because I know I'm going to use a Postgres database, I'm also going to install PsychoPG at the same time. So I'm going to give that a run. Again, this can install Django and PsychoPG inside my virtual environment so that, that I have my bubble for my application here so that if I have another project, they could use their own versioning of Django and or PsychoPG. All right, so I've installed those items. I probably want to create a Git Ignore right now so I don't forget it. So let me do that right now. So Git Ignore, and my main goal is to ignore my virtual environment folder. I don't want to be committing that to my repository, so I'm just going to type venv since that's my folder. I think we always kind of default to ignoring PyCaches also. All right, so that's done. All right, so we've installed PsychoPG and we installed Django. So I think that should take care of our installs for now. Let's continue on with talking to the audience. Eric Berger, you are next up on my view. We've installed Django, we've installed PsychoPG. What's something else, or what can we do now to get our project actually started?
do we update the database to change it to like use Postgres versus SQLite?
Yep, we will definitely need to do that. But currently, looking at our files, we only have our virtual environment folder and README that we were provided. How do we actually get like the Django project files that we need?
This is Django admin start project and then project name.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. So Django admin. So now we actually need to create a Django project, and we do that via Django admin, start project, and then got to give this a name. So I think posts and comments, I'll just name it posts proj. And then again, if you add a period at the end, I guess this is going to wrap, so it's kind of hard to see, but if you add a period, space period, it's going to not create a nested folder structure. That's what I usually default to, just because I don't like having extra folders. If you leave that off, there's no harm there. You're just going to have one more level of folders. So add this period here. Again, it kind of wrapped around. So maybe I can decrease the size here. There we go. So I need a space period, and that should create my project folder. So this is my Django project folder. So settings.py is our main file here that we interact with for getting this project off the ground. But I also want to create an app. So Mark Stanley, how can I create an app here?
You can do Django admin start app and then the app name.
Yep. So there's two ways you could do this. You could do start app, and this totally works. So start app in my app name. So I want to call it posts app. That way works. You could also, once you have your project created, you can use Python manage.py and then do start app also. This will achieve the same results. So either way, you want to do it, you can create your app. So I'm going to call it post app. So I know that's my app folder. All right, so I got my project folder, apps folder. So I think we'll go back to Eric Berger. So Eric, you were mentioning something about changing my settings file. Could you kind of help my recollection? There's two things I probably want to change in there. Do you happen to remember what two things?
Sorry, yeah. Go to the database section of the settings.py.
Yep.
And change SQLite to Postgres SQL. Or yeah. And then in the installed apps, you want to add the app that you just created. So post_apps in the installed app section.
Yep. You got those two things I was thinking of. So yeah, since we're editing the database portion, we're going to use Postgres. We're going to provide it a database name. So at this point, it's probably a good time to create a database. I'm going to go back to my terminal, do create DB. Let's call it posts. Do I have a post one? Yep, I already do. We could drop that. Drop DB posts. All right, so create DB posts. All right, so no errors here. So that created the post database. I could give that name to my Django settings so that it knows what database to work with, called posts. All right, cool. So that was one part of it. And then the second part that Eric also mentioned is adding the app name. So call it posts is my app name, also is my database name. And at this point, I actually have a change of heart. So I'm going to drop my DB posts. I'm going to call it create DB posts _ DB, just to have a slight differentiator. Apparently, I already have that one also. Interesting. At least I'm consistent with my naming, I guess. All right, so create a new DB. I'm going to call it post_DB, just to have a different name that I could add. Create DB. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go back to my database section. Where'd you go? There you are. So post DB will be my database name, just so I kind of distinguish it from my app name, which is actually post app. So there we go. All right, so we added our app to our installed apps. So that was step one, and then updated our database section if you want to use Postgres. Again, by default, it'll be SQLite, but either way, whatever database you use should be fine. All right, cool. All right, so we got our settings file set up. We got our database created, installed Django and CyclePG. Is there anything else that I need to do here, or am I good to go? I'll take that silence as I think I'm good to go. Was there a question there?
No, I was just saying, I don't think there's anything else in settings.
Yep. I think we're good to go now. Yeah, we installed everything, we hooked up everything, hopefully, and I think we can start coding now. All right, so posts and comments. Let's go back to our README. We have a few releases, so just kind of a few steps we want to do. We set up our Django project and app, ensure they're registered with each other. I think we accomplished that. So I'm just going to commit a release 0 since they have this broken down by releases. Always get to incrementally commit to GitHub or to my Git project. So I'm going to do git add everything, git commits, completed release 0. All right, so we have that incremental commit. Cool. All right, let's look at what release 1 is asking for. So release 1, create your routes. All right, so creating routes. Your project folder will already have urls.py in it. This is your starting point of where your project will look for routing information. But your app, usually by, I guess, tradition, usually you want to have a URLs file in your app also. So that kind of handles all the routing for that particular app. Again, if you have multiple apps, you might have multiple URL files that might be investigated. So here I'm going to go to my apps folder, create a new file called urls.py. Just going to copy over my settings to get me started here. All right. So in my app urls.py, so it's it's easy to confuse because there's multiple files by the same name, but usually your project file is going to be pretty straightforward. So in my project URLs, let me start there. I'm going to add this include library or include module, and I'm going to add a new path for this app. So I need something to put here. Again, I can put anything I want. It doesn't have to match my app name. So I'm going to call it blog. That's going to be my base URL. And then I need to include my app. So posts underscore app dot URLs. All right, so this is going to say, hey, there's this additional URLs module that you should look in when you're trying to resolve this path. Okay, so now that that's kind of hooked up, if I go to my app URLs, which I just created earlier, here I want to add more specific paths where I can actually handle the requests. So here, like our homepage, usually we just use empty quotes to be our homepage. We have views that index. So again, this is saying that my views file is going to have some method called index. You don't have to name it index. You can name this, home, homepage, whatever you want to name it. Just, kind of have some sensible naming. Index is usually the name for your homepage. So I'm just going to do .index. Here you can give it a name. You don't have to give it a name, but it's always good to have just extra descriptors. So name will be, let's just call it index. All right, notice that my VS Code is saying, hey, I have no idea what views is. That's because we've not included that in my URLs file. So we'll do that now. Let's do posts app.views, import, sorry, I want to import just the views entirely. All right, so here we have our views.py file. There's nothing in here, but we should create a method called index that will take in, again, by default, these methods need to take in a request value. So again, you can name this whatever you want. So I could call this donuts if I want to. This is just going to be an HTTP request that's coming in. So when a user navigates to your page and goes to your home page, there's going to be a request that's generated. So usually you name that request instead of donuts. And I'll just do a pass right now. All right, so again, just to go over those steps one more time. Our project already has a urls.py file. We added a new line. We gave it a base path. Again, this URL can be whatever you want. Base URL. So in this case, I call it blog. You can name it post. You can name it whatever you feel like is appropriate. Then we included uses include module to specify that our app has additional URLs that should be investigated. So when our project's trying to figure out how to actually resolve the request, it's going to look in our URLs from our app also. Okay, so in our app urls.py, we added one path, and that path is going to be our just base, I guess, URL. So it's me blogs/nothing. That's the nothing right here. We're telling it that our views.index is going to handle that request. And then in our views, we created a method that should handle that request. Right now, we're not doing anything with it, but we'll get to that step in one moment. What questions you guys have so far? Everything kind of seeming familiar? Hopefully you guys are familiar with this process, but if not, that's why we're kind of going through it. All right, so in URLs, it's asking for a couple of routes. One is going to be /posts. That should show all posts, and then another is post with an ID value. Okay, so let's actually add those in. Where do I want to do that? Maybe I guess my base path here will be posts, and let me add a new path. Okay, so we're going to be having an ID, and that ID is actually like a variable almost, as in the user can go to post/1, post/2, any index that they give, that should be a valid URL. So the way we handle that in Django routing is that we use angle brackets, the type that we expect, and then the name we want to give it. So in this case, we'll probably go post ID, and now they can navigate to post/some ID. All right, this case will be, let's call it post detail, because they're going to be viewing the details of the post, and we'll call this post detail. Maybe rename this to post list. All right. So our homepage will show a list. Kind of just
quick question. So in your second URL pattern, the int post ID, where does that information come from and where does it go to?
So that's part of the routing logic. So when the user just types in a URL, basically Django is going to try to match that path. So it's going to check the first line and say, hey, the user's going to post / let's say they're going to, blog/post/5. What it's going to do is it's going to look at the base here and then look at the project URL. So it's going to check, hey, is my base admin or is it blog? So it's going to check the first line and said, nope, this doesn't match my pattern. Let me check the next path. So it's just a list of paths it's going through until it finds a match. So it gets here, like, all right, I found a blog base. Let me continue on. In this case, we're saying check the URLs here. So here it's going to check for blog. So the blog part is already covered when we get to this point. And then it's going to say, all right, I have posts. Does that match this? Well, it does, but there's additional information. So it's going to say, I'm not going to use this routing. I'm going to use this one because this is specifying additional values. So this 5 that the user types in, like when they're navigating, that's going to be captured by this, this variable into this variable called post ID.
Yeah. Does that interact with your function called the views.post_detail at all?
Yep. Great question. So yeah, so I kind of created a post detail call here. So this function is going to be our handler for this, this route. So if I go back to my views, I need to add that method. So I go def, post detail, I called it. It's going to take a request. So this is, again, the HTTP request that is coming in when the user navigates to a site. But additionally, our function here is going to take a new value. It's going to be called post ID. Important thing here, let me add a pass here. This value name must match the value name here. So this variable, post ID, I've named it here. It must be named the same in my views. So post ID here is matching that name. So again, naming is really fragile, as in if you make one typo, it can kind of screw up your entire logic. So just make sure your naming of your variable here matches the name here. All right, so now when the user goes to blog, all right, did I call it blog or blogs? Blog singular, posts, and then number 5, that 5 value is going to be passed to my handler. So I'm going to get a value of 5 here. Okay, so we have our 2 routes that were requested. They're not doing anything right now. We will go to, okay, seems like routing is what we wanted. So I'm going to, maybe we should test that out. So before I actually assume this works, let's quickly test this out. So I'm going to do Django HTTP, imports HTTP response. And basically, I'm going to return that here. So return HTTP response. Let's just say, hey, this route is working. And let's say index and post detail. All right, so it's testing this out. I'm writing a simple HTTP response that should be returned if my routing is set up correctly. All right, so I'm going to save that. Go to my terminal. I'm actually going to run my server. So hopefully everything is kosher, but if not, my terminal should show any errors that I have. So I'm going to do Python manage.py run server. Let's see what happens. All right, so notice I got a warning here. It's in a red text, so it seems kind of scary, saying I have 18 unapplied migrations. This is because I'm not yet done any migrate command. And by default, Django has some models that it wants to create in case I want to use them. But in this case, I'm not interacting with my database at all, right? Like my views here are just returning a response without caring about doing anything with the database. So for now, I'm going to ignore that warning, but that's something we should take care of. But for now, my server should be up. So let me bring up a window. New window. There's my Chrome. I'm going to shift this over one desktop. And all right. So hopefully that's large enough. Probably too large. Okay, so I'm going to go to localhost 8000. Again, by default, 8000 is your default port for Django. That's where the server is running. If you want to specify a different port, you totally can. When you do the run server command, you simply add a port number after it if you want a custom port. In this case, I go to localhost 8000 and notice I get an error message. Well, that's actually what I expect. So this is Django showing an error saying, hey, I don't know what to show here. But it's saying I have two possible paths I can go to. I can go to /admin or go to /blog or blog/, sorry. So let me navigate to blog and let's see what happens. So notice, sorry. All right, notice I went to blog/ and then it gave me some more options now. It's saying, hey, I don't know what to show here because we didn't specify anything for this route. But it's saying, hey, you can go to blog and then posts or blog posts and some ID value or integer value. So let's go to blog posts and see what happens. All right, notice we get a nice message that we were hoping to see. It says, hey, index route is working. That's coming from our HTTP response that we added in here. And just to mention it, I had to import HTTP response from django.http. That's this object here. And then likewise, if you go to a post detail, so to get to a post detail, we need to add an integer value. So let's add 5, since that's what I used before. Notice that we get post detail. All right, so those are our responses. Let's actually see that post detail being used. So let's make this an F string and say post detail for item post ID. All right, so now we actually can see the value we're navigating to and see how it's captured. So if I add that, save that, my server refreshed, no errors down there. I mean, I have a warning, which I will take care of. Let's refresh. Notice that we get a 5 here. That 5 is being captured from the URL that the user went to or was navigating to. So if I change this to like 88, notice that that 88 is captured there. All right, so that one route can basically handle all requests for this path or this route that the user wants to go to. Any questions about our URLs that we set up? Okay, cool. All right, so that takes care of release 1. Let me bring up a new terminal here. Let's do git add whatever, git commit completed release 1, I think. All right, so we have that incremental commit. All right, so we checked off 0 and 1. It's going to get a little more involved. So release 2 is creating our model. So usually this is the hardest part, maybe not the hardest, but definitely requires a lot of thought. So we are creating models and migrate them to our database. Specifically, I want to have a post that can have a title and body and comment that should have a body in a post. Okay, cool. Let's create this. Sorry. All right, so our URLs and views look good for now. I'm gonna close those files, just get more space here. Let's get rid of my terminal for now. And let's bring up our models in our app folder. So here, models.py, we want to actually create our models. So not too many models to create here. One is going to be post. We have to inherit from models that model. That's going to give us our base functionality. And I'm just going to add a pass here. And then we'll have a class of comments, models.model. All right. So I think our post needed a title was one of the fields. So I'm going to create that. Models.char field. Let's make that max length of 64. And we need a body section. Let's just make that a text field. So that means there's no real upper limit. So we have text field and char field. Then we have comment. So comment's also going to have a body. And let's say models. Let's make that limited. So let's say they can't add a super long comment. So let's limit their comment length to be 128. All right. Question for, let's see, who haven't I talked to? Mark Stanley. Question about post and comment. Can you tell me how they are related conceptually? So like, we're going to have a post and we have a concept of a comment. Do they have any relationship? And if so, what is the relationship? Is it one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many?
Well, a post can have many comments.
Can one comment be scattered across multiple posts?
No, a comment belongs to a single post.
Yep, I would agree with that. So given that, I think what kind of relationship do we have here between these two items?
Should be one-to-many.
Yep, that sounds correct to me. And then given that we need to model a one-to-many relationship, how can we accomplish that with Django? Or I guess even think about SQL. What is the key to kind of tying those together in a one-to-many form?
I think we need a join table.
That's a good thought. So a join table accomplishes many-to-many relationships. So I feel like a join table would be able to model a one-to-many relationship, but I would also say that's probably unnecessary at this point.
So just a foreign key?
Yep, you got it. So
Okay.
just to recap, for SQL, when you want a one-to-one relationship, you use a foreign key and a unique constraint. For a one-to-many relationship, you just need a foreign key from one table to the other, but it does matter which table you put it in. And then for a many-to-many relationship, you need to create a join table. But Django kind of makes that easy or easier by having a many-to-many field in the case where your join table doesn't have extra data. Yeah, in this case, we do need a foreign key. Sean Kernan, where does my foreign key need to go? Can I add it to my post table?
It should go to your comment table.
Yep. Can you explain why it makes more sense or why it needs to be in the comments instead of the post?
Because one post can have many comments, but one comment can only go to one post.
Yep.
So
in this
you
case,
want comment to be uniquely tied to one post.
Yep, I would. Yep, I agree with that. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, in this case, we have a post field on our comment model, which means each comment has a maximum of one post. But our posts are not really limited as to how many comments can point to it. So we could have, like a dozen different comments pointing to the same post. That's not going to be limited because there's no restriction or constraint on our post model. But in this case, we're adding a constraint to our comment model, and this is going to be a foreign key that basically points to a post object. All right, so we created a foreign key. Who else do we have? Alex Saunders. What else do I need to add to my foreign key, I guess, connection here? So I have post. I'm telling it which model to connect to. What are two other things that we probably want to add here into, I guess, here?
I would think something equivalent to like the primary key or a unique identifier, but I don't think that's the right answer.
Gotcha. Yeah, we can kind of just kind of refresh our memories. So we would tell it what model to point to. Then we also want to give a related name. So this is optional. You don't have to add a related name, but generally speaking, I would always do it just because now that I add a related name, if I ever have a post object like on hand, what I mean by on hand, just like, I created a post object or have one that was given to me by some other logical component. If I have a post object, I could just call, let's say, I have p1 equals post. I could call p1.comments because I've created this related name. I've specified my related name so that Django creates that kind of field on my post object that doesn't, like, I don't have comments here, but I can access p1.comments from this related name. I think Tom mentioned if you don't specify related name, Django still creates that, field for you. So I think it'd be like comments.set is a default name if you don't provide one. But usually I like specifying my own name. So that's what related name will be for. So I'm going to call it comments. Again, this name, just to be clear, can be anything you want it to be. It does not need to match like this model or this model. It could be literally anything, so long as it's a variable name. So in this case, I can name it donuts. Then in that case, I would do p1.donuts to access all the comments tied to that post. All right, but as always, donuts is never really a good name for variables unless you're actually storing donut information. So I'm going to call it comments. Again, I don't know how to make this plural. I can make this, whatever I want. Collection. The world is my oyster, I guess, in that sense of what I want to name it. But I'm going to keep it comments. All right, so we have that foreign key. So now, again, we have a one-to-many relationship established by this foreign key. All right, I'm going to just add another field. I don't think this was asked for, but just want to add some detail here. So name, this will be a chart field, max length equals 32. And let's say we have a commenter name also. So again, we could add a, if we wanted to create a user model where like users can log in and, we create a representation for those users, we probably can have a foreign key here. But for now, I'm just going to let the users type in their name, and we're not going to check that. Like, we're not going to check that against any records. We just want to have a field where they can specify their name if they want to. All right, so I added those fields. I think my models look good here. I don't know if I'm missing anything. Let's see. We have a body, post. So, yep, I think we accomplished what they're asking for. All right, so who else haven't I talked to this morning? Let's see. James White, I've created my models. Now I actually want to use those models with my database. How do I actually get them into my database?
You have to migrate them, right?
That is correct.
I'm not sure. I always forget the exact order you need to.
Yep. It's a two-step process. Whenever you create models or modify them, the first thing you do is create a migration script. So to do that, Django will do that for you as long as you tell it that you want it to do it. So I do, Python manage.py, and then there's a command of make migrations. So this is going to actually just kind of scan through the models and create, not SQL for you, but it's going to create some script that will be converted to SQL so that your database actually has the correct tables and relationships. So in this case, I do Python manage.py make migrations. Sorry for the word wrapping. I don't know if I could shrink this. That works. All right. So Python manage.py make migrations. We're gonna run that. Okay. So we forgot the second piece, and that's this part's required. So I mentioned related name is optional. You have to specify an on delete method. I'm not sure why Django just doesn't default to one, but I guess they want you to be explicit. So again, this is specifying, hey, if I delete my post, like a post record, and have a bunch of comments that are tied to that post record, how do we handle that in the database? So in this case, on delete. And there we have a few options. The one that I typically pick is cascade. Cascade just means that, hey, if there's a comment tied to a post and we're deleting that parent post, that comment should also be deleted from the database. We don't want like a dingling comment that's not tied to any post. That's what cascade will accomplish. Again, there's other resolutions that can happen. You could say set to null, set a default value on like a comment that exists. If that parent post gets deleted, maybe you like default it to some parent post. I don't know, but cascade's the way we go. So we have on delete models.cascade. All right, so with that, we should be able to make migrations. All right, there we go. So again, on delete is required. Related name is not required, but highly recommended. Any questions about our models here?
I have some that's not really related to the models. It's just kind of a weird question.
Go for it.
So whenever you're doing migrations, obviously each time you do it, you have like 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, or whatever. Is that similar to commits to where you could, so say once you get far enough in your application, can you delete like your first migration and it's still effective as long as you keep your latest one, or how does that work?
I believe that is correct. So I think it runs this file. Then you create a new migration. It's probably going to run only the second one. I don't think it runs all of them, but it has like incremental stages. So I guess, yeah, if you want to roll back, you can probably somehow use those files. I'm not sure how Django kind of uses those in case you want to like roll back to a previous migration state. But yeah, basically, I would say don't mess with your migrations file unless you just want to delete them all and start from scratch. But I can't say on authority if you delete one, if it still work correctly. I think it should. I think it just makes changes. It doesn't run all of them together, but I could be wrong about that. Okay, so yeah, looking at our migration scripts, it's basically just trying to create the fields for us. Again, ID is automatically created for us. We didn't specify that in the models. All right, so we have our migration script ready to go. How do we actually get it to our database? Vincent, could you kind of help me out here?
Yeah, so we're gonna do our so Python, and where's my note? It's not the make migrate, but migrate. Yeah, Python make manage.py and migrate.
Yep, thanks a lot. Yep, so again, two-step process. One, once we've completed our models, we need to create a migration script by running make migrations. And then once that script's been created, we can do migrate. That's actually going to push our the changes to the database. So if I hit that, there we go. Notice that, again, there's a lot of, I'm not going to call it junk, but a lot of stuff that just automatically gets added. This is Django specific. They have their own models that they kind of manage. So all that Django just creates in case it wants to use it. Other than that, the one that I created is over here. So we should be good to go. All right, so we created our models, we migrate them to our database. I think that takes care of release 2. So let me make a quick incremental commit. Git add everything, git commits completed, release 1. Or sorry, release 2. All right, there we go. So release 2 checked off. Next 2 is populate database using the Django shell. Create 3 posts and 2 comments associated with them, and create your HTML views. That'll be release 4. All right, so let's actually go about doing that. I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it seeds.py. So this is the way I actually do it. There's actually a more Django appropriate way to do it. So let's actually investigate that. Also, in case you guys are curious, so I'm going to go to my documentation and look for Django Fixtures. All right, so again, documentation, pretty good documentation here. So there's an idea called fixtures, and this is basically your seed data that Django automatically will run. In this case, there's a few formats you can go with. You can go with JSON, XML, or a format called YAML. So you need to install the PyYAML extension or library if you want to use the YAML. But I'm gonna go with JSON just because that doesn't require any installation. So that's YAML format. I want to go with JSON format. Let's actually just going to copy what they have here. Again, it's going to require some reading here in case you want to know the specifics, but for the most part, you just need to create a fixtures folder and go with that. So if I go to my app, add a new folder, I'm going to call it fixtures. Inside of that, I'm going to create a new JSON file. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it, let's call it seeds.json. Gotta have the right format there. All right, so I'm just gonna paste in what I want because I always kind of forget JSON formatting. Obviously, I need to update this for my models. So in this case, we need to specify a model. So let's go with, what is my app name? Posts_app is my app name. And I gotta specify the model I'm going with. So in this case, my model is gonna be posts. I'm gonna specify the primary key, so I'm actually seeding the table. And then let's give it the fields. So our fields, we had title, we had body, and then we also had name. again, just to recap in case I'm going a little too quickly, just looking at my models, I'm providing information here to actually enter data into my table that got created. So when I made the migrations and migrated to my database, there's a post table created and a comment table created by Django. So now I actually want to add values in there. So I'm going to go to my, again, my seeds.json file and just enter some values in here. So let's say today, Friday, this post is today is Friday. Let's say I made this post, so I'll put my name on there. Let's create another post. Copy this. Let's create another post. Give that primary key to. Same model. Let's make another post. Let's call it Saturday. Tomorrow is Saturday. Maybe less excitement. Who made this comment? Let's see. Who do we got out there? I think Steven made that comment. So we'll give Steven there. Let's make one more post. Forget if they ask for 3 or 2. Let's continue on with Sunday. Sunday is July 4th, actually. So Sunday is July 4th. And then who made that comment? Let's say, who haven't I referenced today? Let's say Jack made that comment. All right, so we're creating seed data here. We created 3 posts. Let's create some comments. So continue on here. Let's take a look at what's going on here. All right, so we're gonna have to tie in the foreign key. Let's see if we can figure that out. All right, so my model is gonna be comment here. And one comment has fields of body. So this is, let's say we're gonna tie this to the Friday comment here. So let's go with happy Friday as a comment. Who made that comment? Let's say Sarah made that comment. All right, so we need to actually specify one more field here, and that is post. I think we could just specify the primary key, but actually I'm not sure. So I'm actually gonna give this a try. We have our JSON. All right, so we have 3 posts that we created. Hopefully you guys can kind of follow this syntax. And then we also created 1 comment. So I actually want to load that into my database now.
Wait, Walker, the foreign key, is that going to be a string or an int?
Good point. Yep, that should be an integer because we're pointing to the primary key of there. I might need to look at my syntax here because I'm kind of rusty on my fixtures here. Well, let's actually try to run this, and if we succeed, then we succeed. If we don't,
I got a question.
Yep, question.
Would you not need to add like almost like a constraint in your seeding? Because if you're going to add more to it, would it not give you an error for trying to reseed the same thing in a table?
I think the way Django handles fixtures, it's actually going to delete your existing data and then recreate it using the seeds file. So the reason this method is a little preferred as opposed to what I usually do. So usually I create my own seeds file, import posts app models. Just give me everything. Let's see it from. All right, so usually I do it this way. We do this in lectures, so you guys hopefully are familiar with it, where I create like a post and give it a title. First post. What else do we have? Body. And then name. So normally I did it this way, where I do, and then save it to the database. This way works. The only downside is if I rerun the seeds file, it's actually going to create another post, and basically it's going to have a different primary key. So I'm going to keep this method keeps adding data versus using the fixtures method. It's going to actually replace the entire data. So it's actually reseeding your entire database versus manually doing it the way I prefer to do it. It actually just creates new data without actually wiping out the past data. You can delete data yourself. I do post.objects.delete, I think. I think I need it all in here. I think I could do something like this. Again, my syntax might be off, but I think you could delete all the posts in your database using post objects.all.delete. Let me double check that so I don't write anything incorrect. Delete query sets Django. Query sets, and I want delete. Delete. Performs SQL delete query on all rows in the query set, returns. All right, so it looks like objects filter. I think I have it correct. So yeah, so this is going to delete all the records from my database. The downside is it's not going to reset my primary key index. So when I do .save, it's actually going to use like the next primary key that I would have used. As in, let's say I had 3 posts in my database and then I deleted them. If I add a new post, it's actually use primary key 4 instead of restarting from 1. So again, that's a little downside of using the seeds method that I go with. But using the fixtures is, again, the Django way to do it. So in this case, let's give this a try and see what happens. So reading documentation, I need to, all right, so by default, Django looks for a fixtures directory inside each app, which we created. You can customize that. If you don't want to create a fixtures folder, you have the ability to control that, but that'll be your own investigation if you want to do it. But basically, it looks like I need to run manage.py load data, and that should run my fixtures. Let's give that a try and see what happens. So I do Python manage.py load data. Okay, I need to specify. Okay, so load data and then seeds.json. So I need to specify the file looks like. All right, so let me clear this out. Sorry. Apologies for cluttering my terminal here. All right, so I'm going to run Python manage.py load data, and then the data file I want to load. So in this case, seeds.json. Okay, notice it said installed 4 objects because I created 4 objects here from 1 fixture file. All right, the question is, did that actually add the data that I wanted? So we could always query our database ourselves. So I'm going to go to pSQL. Our database name was postdb, if I recall correctly. Let's do a select star from, and then again, if you remember the table naming for Django, it's going to be your app name. So post app. And then my table name should be post singular. There we go. Notice our database has that data in there. Now the question is, if I rerun my fixtures, is it going to append to my data here, or is it just going to replace it? So let's actually test that out. Always good to be sure rather than assume. So let's bring up a new terminal here. I'm going to run, let's change our data. So let's go back to my seeds and let's add more explanations to my first post just to see it change. All right, so first post has a whole lot more explanations here. I'm going to run Python manage.py load data. Sorry for the wrapping here. Load data and then the file I want. So seeds.json. All right, so notice again, it installed 4 objects. So basically added 4 items to my database from 1 fixture file. Let's see what our pSQL returns now. So I run my select statement again. Notice I have only 3 records. We didn't append. Django took our seeds file, wiped our data, and reseeded it. So in this case, notice all the new exclamation marks. That's for my new seed data. Any questions about fixtures or using this method for seeding your database? Again, there's multiple ways to do it. I like just creating my own seeds file and seeding it that way. But if you want to kind of have a default, default seeds file that you could run all the time, this way would be a little easier.
How did you import the database for the seed file?
How did I?
Like, what did you use to import the database? What did you import for the seeds file?
So my database was created already. My seeds file is, again, it's just a JSON format. So you got to make sure you know the formatting. So again, I copied, the structure of it and then filled it in what I wanted. So I specified the model, primary key that I wanted for this record, and then the fields. The database, again, is already created and is tied to my Django project. So when I run a command of manage py load data seeds.json, so I don't know if this is the command you're looking for, that's specifying I want to run my seeds.json file, and that load data is going to load it into my database that's hooked up.
Okay. Oh, that's not the command. I was looking for the import like text. What information did you type to import to the import information, the input like the import line at the top of the page? Do you
So-
have to do any kind of import?
Correct. For your seeds file, if you use the fixtures method, you don't have to import anything. You just need to create a JSON format for your data that you want to insert. And that's all you need to do. I think maybe you're asking about my seeds.py file here. Here, I imported my models. Again, this is a different way to seed your database. So in this case, I need to have my models so I can actually use posts in this file. But either way, there's a couple ways to seed your data. You can also do it through the admin panel, which we've not talked about. Hopefully we'll get to that. But I'm going to proceed here just so we can get our challenge.
Oh, okay. So the only thing I need to do is just create a fixture folder and then create a file, seed.json.
Yep, your folder must be named fixtures, or you can figure that, but let's just say it always needs to be named fixtures inside your app. Inside of there, you can create your data files, and then when you run Python manage load data, it'll look in this fixtures folder for you and find that file that you wanted to run.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's complete. I think that completes release 3. I lost track of what we're doing here. Release 3, populate the database using the Django shell. We opted to use the Django fixtures. Either way, we committed some posts, and I guess one more comment would be nice. Let's just satisfy that requirement. So go to my fixtures, make one more comment. What else? Post app comments, primary key 1. Let's tie this one to Saturday. Let's make it Sunday. So July 4th. I love fireworks. And who made this comment? Let's say this was, who hasn't commented yet? Say this was Dawn. All right, there we go. Saving this. I need to change my primary key up here. That give me a violation. All right, just gonna run that again. Cool, 5 objects this time, so I think we're good to go. And I'm going to do an incremental commit. So I'm gonna do git add everything, and then git commit.
So the JSON file seems a little bit bloated, like as far as takes quite a few lines to add one comment.
Yep.
So you should only really be seeding what you're testing your program, like on a functional sense. Are you only seeding what you're testing everything with, or because I assume with the seeding file, like if you had to seed an entire database with something, like the file would just be ridiculously long.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, usually it's for testing. I would say you might want to create fixtures for data that is constant. So what I mean by constant is like data types. So let's say I'm running an ice cream shop and I want to have like predefined flavors that are, not going to change dynamically. Like I just want chocolate, strawberry, and like vanilla or whatever, and those are my only flavors. I might create like a seed file that can start my database with those, so I don't have to add those on the fly, if that makes sense. As opposed to users and orders and whatever else, those are dynamic, right? Like a user comes into my store, I might need to register the user if I was doing that for an ice cream shop. And then if they place an order, I might want to track that in my database, versus my menu items should be fixed, or like a constant value. Obviously I can add more flavors later if I want to, but there's probably like a base data that you're working off of.
And then you wouldn't be able to use multiple seed files, right? Because the seed file deletes everything. So if you like did a seed.json and then seed2.json, when you implemented seed2, it would erase everything from seed, the original seeds, right?
I don't want to 100% say no, but I believe you can run multiple seed files and they're not going to clash with each other. So I think when you load data, that's going to wipe all your data somehow. Again, I'm not clear on it, so I don't want to kind of guess, but I am guessing, I guess. I think load data is going to delete your data once, and then it's going to run. You can run multiple seed files. So in this case, I use one fixture. I'm pretty sure you can use multiple seed files. So like I might probably have my post data in one file and my comments data in another file. Those won't kind of overwrite each other.
And that would be Python manage.py load data seeds.json space seeds2.json or whatever, however you name it. Okay.
I believe so, yeah. But I'd point you to the documentation instead of, because I don't use fixtures too often enough to know, but I'm pretty sure you can run multiple seeds file.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, thanks for asking. All right, good. All right, we completed release 3. The last thing we need to do is our HTML views. Let's kind of get that up and running. So again, just remembering from lectures or reading documentation, I need to create a new folder. I'm going to call it templates, and that needs to be in my app directory. So I have templates. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call that the same name as my app. Again, this is kind of what Django wants. I don't think this is mandatory, but it's kind of how Django wants files organized. You do need a templates folder. In this case, post app is what I'm going to call it. I can call that something else if I want to. Let's see if I can do that right now. So I'm just going to call it post instead. Let's see if that actually works. All right, inside there, I'm going to create a new file and call it index.html. And then let's create another one called post detail.html. All right, so here I'm going to create a HTML template file, which is basically going to be a HTML file. So let's go HTML. Here's my base HTML template that I use, and then here, let's think about this. So I think my index, I want my homepage to show all the posts that are available, and a link to a post detail page for each of those. So in this case, I'm going to write some Python here. So I'm going to do a for loop. So for we're going to have post in posts. And then we need to end this for again. So in Python, we normally don't need to, declare the end of a for loop or if statement, but in the templating we're doing here, we need to specify when that for loop actually ends. Inside of here, let's create lists elements, and here I'm going to use a post.title. So again, this posts is going to be a collection or a list of post objects, and then posts objects are basically instances of this. So I will have access to title, body, and name from that object. So if I go, where did it go? Index, I want post.title listed. I actually want that to be a link. So let's make a link out of that. /a post title. All right, that should link to somewhere. So we need a href, and then where's that going to? Let's see.
Something like post / then the ID of the post.
Yeah, there's a couple ways we could do this. I'm not sure if we covered this yesterday, but generally speaking, you want to have relative naming. You don't want a hard code naming if you can avoid it. So there's a syntax in Django that can let you kind of name items relatively. So what do I mean by that? So for my link, I'm going to do URL, give it a name, let's say post app. And we'll explain what's going on here. So let's say that's post app, index, and sorry, I think that's post list. Again, we'll talk about this, so apologies if I'm losing you for a second. In this case, we're going to have post ID, post detail. All right, so what's going on here?
Would be post.id?
Post, yes, I think that, wait, right here?
Post the .id instead of just posts ID?
Gotcha. Yeah, so post ID, this is my object that I'm iterating over. So this object will give me an ID from its model. I'm calling something called post detail. Now, where am I getting that name from? I didn't quite just make it up. I mean, I guess I did make it up at some point. But if I go back to my URLs file, notice that the name here is what I need to match. So I guess in this case, I went with the dash instead of underscore, so I need to match that. So let me go back to my file I was working on. So post detail is the name of that route that I created. Post app is the name of my app. So I need to specify that inside of my URLs. So I'm going to go back here and I need to give it an app name. So here, I need to actually give it an app name here. So in this case, post.app. We could try renaming this and see what happens, but I'm just going to keep this consistent with my app name. So post_app is the app name. So again, this value has to be named app_name. This is something Django will look for when you're creating some links. So in this case, app_name is a value that you can populate. So in this case, I call it post_app. I go back to my template. So the first portion of this is my app name that is just specified in my urls.py. The second part is the route name, and that's separated by a colon. Right. So what this is saying, it's going to look for something called post detail in my URLs here. The reason why this is preferred generally is because what if I want to change like the signature? Sorry, not that. Like if I want to change the name of this method or like the signature of my route, that shouldn't matter. All I need to know is that post detail is the name of this route, so that if I want to change this to like something, the user, my linking won't have to change. So just to make that a little more clear, if I made this hard coded or more specific, I guess. So if I had a link here and my href was simply posts / ID. Something like this. So if I was linking to post and then the post ID directly, well, that's going to break if I add, if I change my path here. So if I add this something here, well, now I got to go back to my templates and I got to have to add that something here. So I would have to do something here. So if I had multiple templates, obviously I had like, dozens of files. That's not going to be easy to manage. The reason this way is preferred is now I'm telling it the name of the route I want. I'm not telling it the path that it's looking for. So this route name will actually match this name that I provided here. And then this URL can be, that can change if I need to change it. Normally, you don't want to be changing your URLs either, but that can be a case. Right. So just to kind of stare at that a little bit more, the syntax for that looks like this, where you do curly bracket, %, type in URL, and then you want to give it the name of the route that you want to link to. This post ID is additional value that we're passing. That's because this route captures a post ID. All right, so let me delete the extra link. I probably need to create an outer list here, so let's make that an unordered list. I guess it could be ordered, but make it unordered. All right, so post here. So then we get to actually pass some data in here, and this is going to be done via our render method. So I'm going to save this file, go to my views, which I think I closed. All right, so here, right now for our index, we're just returning an HTTP response. But now I actually want to return that template file I created. So instead, I'm going to use this render method that should already be included inside your views. But if not, you should import that from Django.shortcuts. All right, so I'm going to call render, return render. Get rid of my other return because I don't need it. Return render. And this is going to take in a few items, your requests, your original requests. It's passed in template name. So this is where we need to find that template. So in this case, I've created a folder called posts. So that's what I am going to be calling here, posts, and then the name of my templates, index.html. And what else? The third item is going to be my data. So this is what you actually pass to your template file. So in this case, I need to create a dictionary that's going to specify all the data I want to pass. So in this case, let me talk to the audience because I feel I haven't talked to you in a while. Who am I chatted with? Let's go with Jonas. I think I called it on you earlier, but I'm going to go back on you. I think I talked to pretty much everyone. Jonas, what do I want to pass my data? So looking at my index, what value do I need to create, as in the key of the value of the data I want to pass in?
Actually, I got a little confused a while back. I've been trying to go through my notes and trying to figure out where you
it's
are.
totally fine. Yeah, I might have gone a little fast. So what I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, I have something called posts here. How to actually pass data to this template here? So I've named it post. So if I go back to my views, the key of my value has to be named post. Again, this name is matching this name. Again, it's really fragile. Like if I name this something else or change it in the future, like if I append an underscore X, then I would need to change the name here also to match that. So it's very easy to break. Hopefully you're not renaming things too often, but in this case, I've named it posts, and this is where I want to pass my data. So in this case, my index page just wants to list all the posts that exist in my database. Sarah Delheim, how can I actually pass all the posts from my database in my views here to, I guess, my page I'm going to pass it to? So my render method is going to pass some data. I want to pass it all the posts in my database. What do I need to add here?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so how do we query the database from Django? So we call the model and we do objects and then .all. This is equivalent to in SQL where we do select star from table name. So in this case, the table name is posts. I guess technically it's post app underscore post, but basically it's selecting everything from that table and returning that as a query set for us. So now that we have that, we're passing that as our data. We need to specify what post is. So I'm going to do from post app imports post.
I guess this is where I had a question going through things yesterday. Why is it that the data doesn't, because post objects all is a full database of something, but it looks like you're defining a dictionary. So why, and it looks like a dictionary of one entry. So if you refer to posts, basically it's going to create a dictionary entry where if you say posts, then out comes the entire table.
Yeah, so the reason I have a dictionary here called data is because the render method requires that you pass in a dictionary.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't pass in a list or just pass in some variable. The render method needs a dictionary. It's going to look inside of that dictionary when it's trying to match something in the template. So in this case, when it comes to this line and says, hey, you're calling post, what is that? Like by default, HTML doesn't have any knowledge of that. But as Django is processing this template and trying to create an HTML page for you, it's going to find posts and then it's going to investigate your data dictionary you passed in. So again, you can name this dictionary what do you want. I can call it stuff. That's fine. It's just a variable name. So stuff works as well. It's going to look for a key called post because my template had a value of some variable called post.
Okay. And I guess a follow-up question with the curly bracket %sign in the HTML file. Can't you access the database directly using the double curly bracket, or am I I guess I'm a little confused as to the difference between the two.
Yeah, this is just syntax of using, I guess, Python within your HTML file. So you use curly bracket %signs for like if blocks or for statements. Use double curly brackets for just straight up values. So in this case, I'm writing like some Python here. I'm just extracting a variable value.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird syntax. Kind of just gotta get used to it. I make mistakes all the time, as in, yeah, I always kind of get confused. Do I need double brackets? Do I need quotes? Like in this case, I still need the quotes because it's part of the href. But yeah, I always get confused. So it's not the easiest kind of easiest syntax to deal with. But just to tie back what we're trying to accomplish, we're passing something called posts as our data, or in this case, I call it stuff. Whatever, it's a dictionary. My template will take that in and should loop over that and create list elements for it. So let's actually check this out and see if it works. So what do I need to do?
Post.objects query should have objects.
What was that? Objects. Thank you. Good catch. All right, let me see if this runs. If not, we'll try to fix it. So let's go back to our homepage, which is blog/post. That's the route I defined. The site can be reached because my server is probably down. So let's get my server running, python manage.py run server. All right, we got some errors. Cannot import post from post app because that's from models. My bad. All right, so notice that when I fixed it here, my terminal automatically refreshed. So I didn't trigger that. I didn't manually refresh it. Django kind of has that automatically refreshing. So now my server seems to be running because I have this familiar looking thing. All right, so my server should be up. I got some errors here because I have bad stuff up here. All right, refresh. All right, notice that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are posted here. These are the posts I created. I don't know if it's easy for you guys to see. Probably not. Look at the very bottom of my window. It's kind of tiny font. But that, when I hover over these links, it actually shows me what route it's going to go to. So if I click on Saturday, it's going to go to /blog/post and the number 2, because that's the primary key for that post. So if I click on it right now, again, this is our post detail page. It's not actually, showing the post details, but it is linking correctly. So if I click on Friday, notice that's item 1. If I click on Sunday, it should be item 3. Yep, because that's what the route is.
So if you have, like, say, Facebook, and it has the scroll down feature where it just keeps on populating with a large enough database, this is how you would be able to implement that? With the links going to some functionality, like, as opposed to hand coding everything, which would be impossible for a scroll down feature. But if it populates off of a list of, say, users or posts, I guess not an important question, I guess. Just thinking.
Yeah, the Facebook scrolling, I think that's a different mechanism. Like, it's incrementally loading data, which is a little different than this. Like this, we're actually linking to a different page versus Facebook, your like newsfeed is technically like infinite. So like as you scroll, I think it queries the database and adds new items. So yeah, it's probably not loading all the posts or all the newsfeed items for Facebook. I think that's a different mechanism than what we're doing here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like our index page is working correctly. I'm gonna quickly code up our details page, but it should be a similar process, right? So I'm gonna create an HTML file. Let's get rid of this stuff for now.
And the boilerplate that you use, is that just the boilerplate HTML5 extension on VS Code?
The boilerplate is something I created, but it's very similar to the default one. So if you want to use the default one, you just do exclamation, I think, and hit enter, and that should create the default one for VS Code.
Yeah, but the one that you created, was that off of the boilerplate extension, or is there a different way to do that?
That's a snippet I created. So you can create your own snippets, which is useful for code that you're repeatedly writing. So I'm just used to using mine. But again, it's just, basically a boilerplate HTML template. It has the head sections and body sections. A few more sections just for organization points sake. Okay, so this is going to be very similar to what we just did. For my title, I'm actually going to use, depending on the article I'm on. So let's do post.title. It's going to be my title of my page. And let's show some detail here. So H1 tag seems appropriate for my title. So do post.title. And then what else? Let's just add some quick details. So H2 will be post.name. That's the author of the post. And then we want to show the post.body in a paragraph. All right, so just grabbing the values off a post object, but the main thing we need to do is actually pass a post object to this page. So how do we actually accomplish that? So if I go back to my views, I'm going to change my post detail method. Instead of returning an HTTP response, I want to do something similar to what I was doing in my index. I'm going to copy that to start off with. Let me minimize my terminal a little bit. All right, so I have stuff, but now I don't want to pass it all the posts in my database. I want to pass it one particular post. And that post is going to be keyed off the ID that's passed in here. So the value I'm going to go with here is post, again, because in my post detail, I'm calling something called post. If I want to rename this, I totally can. I can call it donut. That works. But I'm going to call it post. So here I call it post. So my views, I need to populate my dictionary with something called post. But again, I don't want to pass it all the posts in my database. I just want one post item. Does anyone know how to get one particular post item from my database?
You can use the .get function from your post.objects.
Yep. And then what do I pass in here?
ID equals your post _ ID.
Yep. So Jack is familiar with our syntax. Also, just a note, instead of passing ID here, I believe you could do PK, and that's going to do the same thing. So PK stands for primary key, as you might guess. This should do the same thing. So again, you might see the syntax as opposed to the ID directly, but either way should work. So in this case, we want to get the post ID that has that, and that'll be our post. We probably should verify, like we probably want to do a check here that it's not null. So maybe do post equals get this. And then if, let's say if post is none, that means we didn't actually get anything returned. Let's return an HTTP response saying, hey, that post doesn't exist. All right, and then I think one other thing I want to add to my post detail is going to be a for loop. I'll do that in a bit, sorry. Okay, so going back to my views, if the post doesn't exist, we return some error. Otherwise, we're going to want to render the template using the post object. So let's give this a run and see if I screwed up anything. My terminal seems to imply I don't have any errors right now. So I'm back to this, this friendly looking item. So let's go back to here and refresh this. Let's click on Sunday. All right, click on Sunday, got nothing here. So it looks like I screwed up something. Let's try to fix that. Post that index. So that's not what I want to actually render, right? Index was my home page. Here, I want to render post detail because that's the name of my template. Let's save that. That looks good. Let's go back, click on Sunday. Template does not exist. Blog post 3. All right, so obviously my template naming has to be consistent. So let's see. Post detail. I forgot the S. And naming is very particular. In this case, I called it post underscore detail. I probably just want to rename my template file. I don't think I want a plural there. All right, so my template file is post underscore detail. So make sure that name matches here. All right, so given that, let's try that one more time. There we go. So Sunday was our title. Jack was the author of this post. And then the content or the body of that post is Sunday is July 4th. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to that holiday. All right, there's one last thing I want to do with this, and then we'll take a break. I want to actually show the comments associated with this. So remember we added some comments, and those comments are tied to posts. How can I actually get that into, how can I actually show those comments? Well, if you remember, kind of backing up, let's go back to our model. So our model created a foreign key on our comments model, but we created a related name. So now that we have that related name, we can call, like if we have one post, we call post.comments and have access to all of those comments. So to go back to my template file, see we have post.title, we're doing post.name, post.body, post.comments should also be accessible here. So I'm going to create a for loop for comments in post.comments. Now we should have access to all the comments and we can show them as we wish. So sorry. What's going on? All right. And we need to end this for loop. So end4, just remember your syntax for that. And then here we want to show all of our comments. So let's just say right now we want to show, say h3 comments dot body. And then let's make this paragraph. And let's use a span maybe.
So when looking up the different syntaxes and options that we have for using Python within HTML and Django, what would we look up for that? Would it just be like Python injection in Django or Python in HTML and Django, or like what would be a good way to?
Jujitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sent a link in the Ask with the documentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have our comment body here. So if we save that, again, we're just looping over our comments and then showing the body of that comment. So if I refresh this, related, not iterable. I think I always screw this up. So I think I need a dot all here. That one I'm missing. There we go. So I love fireworks is a comment. Let's actually stylize that a little differently. So can I use I? Is that legit still? It might be emphasis or something, but just want to distinguish that. So all of our comments should be italicized if that still works. I think that's outdated, but yeah. So I like fireworks is a comment by comments dot name. So we'll also show the person that made that comment. Forget who made that comment. I think it was Don, maybe. Let's find out. refresh. Yep. I love fireworks. That comment was by Don. Again, we have multiple comments here. We should be able to see them. So if we want to quickly do that, I think I'm probably running low on time. Let's add one more comment for that same post. So in this case, primary key for that comment will be 3. Same post. Let's say someone hates fireworks. And I think dogs usually have a hard time with it. So let's say Scooby hates fireworks. They kind of freak out with loud noises. So we have Scooby. So let's run this fixtures file.
Could need a comment or a comma on 46.
Thank you. You guys are great at spotting those errors. All right, so let's do Python manage.py load data seeds.json to reseed my database. Of course, you don't want to make typos. Seeds. All right, so 6 objects, and then my server was going somewhere. Okay, so let's refresh this. Notice we got 2 comments now. I got I love fireworks by Don, and then I hate fireworks by Scooby. All right, so that I think takes care of the general gist of posts and comments. What questions you guys have about creating templates or creating URLs or creating data in your database? Anything unfamiliar or something you just want to discuss a little bit more?
Yeah, quick question. In views.py, the request object, what data is that? Is there anything useful in there that we're gonna need to know, or just?
Yeah, there is useful information. We will get to that. I think we might have used the post object yesterday for the polls. So yeah, the request object can have like post data for like if your user is filling out a form, that data is going to be contained in your request object. So we'll see that shortly. But for now, I'm just going to commit this to my GitHub, and I think that should wrap it up. So I won't bore you with the git commit, but let's take a quick break. Let's take a 8-minute break, and then we'll get into some material for today.